Okay. All right. Am I live? Appears I'm live. Good morning. Happy Friday. Wow, nothing is in here early. So what are we thinking? This got set up on accident? Heck no. No accident. Purpose. That is me. I always work with purpose. I am purposeful. Yes, indeed. Yeah, this popped up. Somebody shared it with me on one of the Discords I'm on. Thanks, Joe. And I thought it might be worth taking a look at. I've said before, I felt like I owed folks more streams this week. I've been short on streaming. So this one is probably not going to be, I usually like to run the streams for an hour just to make it feel like it's worth everybody's time. I'm not going to do that here. I'm not going to worry about it being an hour. I'm just going to look at it. So what this is a game called CROWS. And I looked at it. I saw the image, which is cool, apparently by someone named Nick Despain. And it looks neat. And this is new from MCDM. This is, James Introcasso's piece. So he detached himself from Draw Steel to work on something else. And this apparently is the thing he's working on. So let's just read it and we'll see what we think. And you can let me know what you think and I'll let you know what I think. Okay. Introducing CROWS. This was posted yesterday. And this is on the MCDM Productions Patreon. I have linked to that in the description. Fortune or Death. Hey everyone, James Introcasso here to tell you about a new role-playing game that I'm leading the creation over here at MCDM with Nick Despain. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Directing the art. I'm proud to officially announce CROWS, a survival horror dungeon crawling role-playing game. The characters aren't heroes, they're adventurers who dive into dangerous ruins to make a living. This isn't a game about fighting monsters, though there are monsters aplenty. CROWS is about staring death in the face and grabbing as much loot as you can before your luck runs out. Does this pitch sound familiar? I wonder where I might have heard that pitch before. Okay, that's a free Patreon post. Great. Is this Draw Steel Dungeon Edition? The mechanics of Draw Steel, particularly the design of heroic resources, victories, recoveries, classes, kits, and treasures, are great for a heroic story, which isn't CROWS. If Draw Steel is a tactical, cinematic, heroic fantasy RPG, man, I appreciate that they do lay it out, but boy, that is a mouthful. CROWS is a chaotic, post-apocalyptic dungeon survival RPG. We need rules that work for the kinds of stories that CROWS is meant to tell. So that means no heroic resources, no hero tokens, and no victories. CROWS does share one part of its core rules DNA with Draw Steel, the power roll. Like Draw Steel, CROWS uses 2d10 plus a characteristic, plus a relevant skill to overcome challenges. If the result of the roll is 11 or lower, you fail, and quite often suffer a setback. On a result of 12 to 16, you achieve partial success or succeed with a consequence, and on a 17 plus, you succeed. If you roll a natural 2 or 3, you suffer a doom. That means extra bad stuff befalls you. If you roll a natural 19 or 20, you score a critical. That means extra good stuff befalls you. So I think the interesting thing here is just on-offing is, I think it's smart to use that core system. I mean, I feel like part of what you're trying to do when you're designing these systems is you want to form an ecosystem. And sometimes it happens accidentally, sometimes doing it on purpose. But you have a core mechanic that you like, so you build a bunch of stuff around that core mechanic. So if you have people who are already into Draw Steel, they want to try something new, and you just so happen to have a game that fits that genre, if people are like what people like in Draw Steel and they enjoy that central mechanic, then you use it, or you can just, let's go play this. I mean, Free League has that with their 0 year engine. Modifius has their 2D20. Obviously, the D20 system just spawned untold numbers of different games, powered by the apocalypse. You name it. We see at the end of the odd lineage would probably be another one. So it's probably wise. I think the interesting thing here, and this is something that I'll be curious not how they approach it, right? So we can see here when you're rolling this, essentially your 2d10 roll. Okay, I was going to say D20, essentially D20 roll, but it's 2D10, whatever. You're making that power roll. I'm going to use their lingo. In Draw Steel, one of the big selling points of Draw Steel was that you cannot do nothing. Nothing is null results do not exist, and Matt Colville went on a bunch of videos, which I think were persuasive in arguing why these null results are bad. But here, clearly, there is a fail state. You roll 11 or lower, you do not make it. You fail. And so I guess I'm curious if they mean in the classic sense of failure, like you could get basically that you just whiffed or you missed or you did nothing kind of thing. Or, and I know they mentioned quite often suffer a setback. So maybe that will be what they're going to do forward. It's like, yeah, you did not succeed, but you've created this setback, which at least is something happening. It's not just you did nothing. But it's pretty interesting because we're getting back to a little bit more of your classic standard role-playing game stuff here. Obviously, they've got the mixed success, partial, and then regular success, and then critical success, and also kind of the critical fail. But it'll be interesting just what they do with this, and how they do it, and what their thinking is, because it's just interesting when you see, I guess, as a group, as a team, they were saying, no, these fail zero states are bad, and now it's like, here, we're doing a new game with a fail state. But they're different. I know they're different things, and I think one of the things that I've argued or I've said about, say, the OSR or the kind of lighter systems is that when combat is moving or things in general is moving quickly, a fail state isn't the last thing in the world because it's not a half an hour between turns. I mean, you're playing Draw Steel or 5e or 4e or some of these other games. Each round of combat, when everyone's taking a turn, it can be long. So you are waiting a long time. And so then you're waiting a long time and you just kind of swing and a miss and you go along. It can feel, not great, suboptimal. Whereas if you're playing an older school style game or a lighter game, oftentimes those rounds are much faster. So the fact that you swung and missed doesn't really matter nearly as much. It's not going to affect you nearly as long because you're going to get another turn pretty quickly. Hey, Croco. Okay. Let's see. In Draw Steel, the power roll is often a result of good, better, best, critical. For CROWS, see, he's answering my question. I didn't wait. For CROWS, I wanted to have more explicitly bad results to make a game that's grittier and less heroic. Okay, so there you go. There is the thinking right there in front of me. They want it to be grittier, and that includes doing more oopsies. Quaco says the only fail state is not playing or playing, depending on circumstances. I mean, yes, ultimately, this is where I'm probably like in the curmudgeon old man shaking fist, but I always feel like part of the thing is people do the whole combat is war versus combat is sport in terms of the OSR, which is not totally correct, but it gets to some things about. But I feel like overall, I kind of treat the game like a sport. And in a sport, sometimes you miss. You're playing baseball, you're ninth in the batting order. You got to go 1 through 9. It may be 2 innings before you hit, and then you might strike out on 3 pitches, and it might be 2 innings again. And maybe people would say, well, that's why baseball sucks. I guess. But it's also like, Or, football. Everyone loves football. Well, football, you're on offense, defense, special teams. There's a good chunk of the game you're not involved in where you're waiting for your turn. And then even when it is your turn, if you're a receiver and they throw, you're hoping the ball comes to you, but they run it 3 times in a row and punt. It's just kind of part of the sport. And I don't really know how to express it other than that. Croco says, in some sports, all you do is miss. Yeah, or soccer, you're the back line and your team's doing really well. You may get a couple things, but you're going to be hanging around. Or if you're the goalkeeper, you're definitely hanging around and back. And I know that basketball is maybe more fast-paced and is different like that. But even then, you may do a bunch of running up and down the court and not get the ball offensively and not not defensively have to challenge anything. It's just kind of part of the sporting part. Okay, but this is interesting because they're tying it in. I guess ultimately, if I would say it's interesting because I don't remember getting the sense of this from watching the other stuff when they were talking about getting rid of the fail state, but it is interesting to think about it that they want, in part of that heroism is that not missing, which I don't agree with, just in terms of, I feel like a lot of times the best moments come from missing and then hitting and things like that. But, whatever. Their idea of part of this thing is, hey, you're a hero, so you don't miss. Now they're going, well, you guys aren't heroes, so you guys can miss, and you might miss often. Okay. The tiered nature of the power roll also lends itself to this style of play, as many of you may know from various Powered by the Apocalypse or Forged in the Dark games you may have played. So CROWS has Doom, Bad, I'll Take It, Good, and Critical. The bonuses a PC gets to add to their roll tend to be smaller in CROWS than in Draw Steel. The odds of getting a 17 plus result are slightly lower, but there's no limit to the number of circumstantial bonuses you can have. So unlike Draw Steel, the bonus potential is very high if you plan accordingly. It's a much swingier game, even though it uses the same core mechanic, and that is by design. All right, so, it's it's just interesting. I guess what makes me laugh is because it's like they went and did all this stuff, kind of changing things and now they're coming back, right? It's like, oh, now we're doing a more conventional game, but we have our reasons. It's kind of funny. I don't know. It just reads a little bit funny to me, just because it's like, yeah, this game is basically doing what all the other games for the past 50 years have been doing. But they're putting it, they're pitching in terms of their game, which is just, I don't know why it's funny to me, but it's funny. But I'm interested to see what they do with this. Okay. Focus, equipment, and loot. In many fantasy RPGs, characters get their ability to do cool stuff like cast spells or turn to animals from a class or special feat or other feature, and their equipment enhances those abilities, like a wand giving a spellcaster access to more spells per day, or a belt allowing a barbarian's battle rage to last longer. In CROWS, the opposite is true. Anyone who has a Melt spellbook can attempt to cast the Melt spell, but some PCs have bonuses, skills, or traits that allow them to cast the most effective version of the spell, while others might be better suited to swinging a sword or using a set of lockpicks. In other words, the character options you take in CROWS enhance what your equipment does, and not the other way around. All right, so that's an interesting way of framing the classic structures of the game, but cool. Why design the game this way? Because CROWS is about looting dungeons. A player is more incentivized to put their character in harm's way if not only does the equipment make them more powerful, but also expands their character options. Want to expand the number of spells that you can cast? Well, you better head into a dangerous dungeon so you can find more spellbooks or gather the coins you need to buy what you want. All right. I mean, it's real. I'm really curious. It's like you're looking through the looking glass. You've just gone into the looking glass. Hey, Brian Smith. Only because, I guess we're at the point. I guess here I would say is we're at the point of the game, not the game. We're at the point of things where people have been playing, potentially coming to the hobby in, let's say, the early 2010s, played 5th edition, maybe nothing else, and maybe some other games like that. And now, maybe through this, are going to rediscover the style of play that's been sitting there for 50 years. But they're just not really aware of it, or they're only aware of it incidentally or kind of on the edges of things. And I guess just some of the MCDM, I feel like they do. I'm not trying to pick on them, but they have this tendency, I think, to frame things that they're doing in terms of like, we're doing this. And so, they're saying, hey, we did this, and now we're looking at loot, and here we're thinking about character options, and that's, it's like, oh, MCDM, it's like all this, like they make it sound like they're innovating all this stuff. It's like, no, are you innovating it by going back to what's been done? I don't know, but I'm coming at it from somebody who grew up with that kind of game, right? And I think I have to look at it like a lot of MCDM's audience, maybe, I guess, might be folks who only have tangential knowledge of this stuff, or maybe even no knowledge. Does that make sense? I don't know. But it's hard for me not to look at it and say, oh, yeah, you're innovating back to what we were playing in 1980. Like, great. Okay, let's see. So CROWS embraces a character advancement idea that's not new to tabletop RPGs. Well, at least they're admitting that. In fact, it's as old as the pastime itself. PCs gain experience points not by slaying monsters or completing quests, but by calculating the value of the treasure they bring back to town after exiting a dungeon and dividing it among the PCs who entered the dungeon. That number equals the amount of XP each PC earns. This creates incentive for the characters to fill their pockets with as much loot as possible while avoiding or overcoming dangers so they live to gain monetary and experience rewards. You don't need to kill every monster in a dungeon to reap its XP. You just need to get the gold and get out. It says retrovating? I'm not sure. Let's see. I mean, it's good. And look, at least they admitted this is not their new thing, right? They're admitting that XP for gold is old, even though some of these other things, though I'm hoping, I guess my hope for their project is that they're taking a fresh eye to this, that having gone in a different direction, Now they're coming back, and now they're going to be looking at it, and we're going to see some interesting twists. Because right now, this reads like you could have taken this and copy pasted it to any of the games that have come out in terms of, I mean, not in terms of the system stuff, but right in terms of, hey, we're going into the dungeon, we're going to, like, all that stuff's like, yeah, it's been done. So I guess at this point, the interest here is from, well, they're doing it with their 2D10 system, and they're adding the kind of what do you call it? I guess the spectrum of success levels, and you're using that 2D10 would be the things right now. Everything else at this point reads as kind of bog standard OSR, NSR, whichever game. Brian says, Draw Steel seemed like an older school-based system as an alternative to the loose 5e offering. Well, I do feel like it was kind of look. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. It was the Matt Colville's 4th edition Heartbreaker, and I think it succeeds. I feel like for the people who love 4th edition style games, I would say from what I've read, probably it has surpassed Lancer as kind of the, if you got to play 4e clone, the 4e clone of choice, I think. But this is specifically Intricasso, right? So this isn't, I don't know if, I'm sure Colville will be in the loop and in stuff, right? But this is his vision. And maybe he's just something he's wanted to do for a long time. Okay, so where are we now? Okay, here we go. If you've ever played a survival horror or dungeon crawling game, you know that managing your inventory is part of the game. You can never quite carry everything you want to have on hand in the dungeon, so you need to make some decisions about what to take with you before you enter the Vault of the Horned Skull. How many arrows should you take? What about rations, potions, and spellbooks? What about armor? It affords nice protection, but takes up a lot of space in your inventory. Deciding what you bring with you determines what you can do in the dungeon, so choose carefully. The big nut we want to crack is making inventory management more engaging and less like accounting. All right, so here we go. So let's see what if they're giving hints about what they want to do with inventory. By making equipment determine what special things your character can do, we're already part of the way there. It's no longer just inventory management. It's character building, and that's a lot of players' favorite part of the game. So it seems to me they're hinting at, and I guess they hinted at this before, implying, is that an odd-like thing? I forget which game is it. Is it Into the Odd, or it's not Troika, I don't think. Where basically your equipment says what you can do. I think Karen's like this too. Yeah, it must be the odd likes, right? That your abilities, and they're not going all the way there, because I'm pretty sure Karen and the odd likes are classless. But it seems like they're doing something with a mixture of class, but also your equipment determines what you can do. So, for example, in Karen, you could pick up a spell book, and then you can cast spells. As long as you got that spell book in your hand, you can cast spells. But stuff tends to shrink your inventory. There's some mechanics in there for your inventory. And so inventory shrinking as you get fatigued and whatnot. So you can't necessarily carry a bunch of spell books with you. And sometimes you got to make the hard choice about what you need to get rid of, and do you need to drop that spell book. But basically, if you're carrying it, you can use it, and that's kind of your shtick. I don't love that necessarily. It just, conceptually, I've always felt like if you're a soldier, you're a soldier, and you're a soldier, it's like you're that archetype. Maybe a soldier is not the right word, because that's really an occupation, right? You're a warrior type. You hand Conan a spell book, he's still Conan. Or you take Conan's sword away, he's still Conan. You hand Conan a spell book, maybe he'll start beating people over the head with a spell book because he's Conan. He doesn't change into Merlin because you hand them the spell book, right? But I think in a lot of circumstances, particularly in short games and things like that, it's a lot of fun. Almost feels like a roguelike or something, where you're just like, oh, I pick up this stuff and I can just change who I am on the moment and whatever. But just from a character, I don't know, long-term standpoint, I've just never loved that. But this is more kind of in my theory crafting mode. It sounds like potentially they're going to be doing something similar. Like, look here, we're going to have, Knave might have been the one I was thinking of. But no, I think it's Into the Odd. I don't know. One of those games has that kind of inventory makes the character. But obviously, they have already mentioned classes. I'm pretty sure they're keeping classes. So they're doing some combo. But that's only part of the equation. Can we make an inventory management system that's more fun than adding up the weight of each item you grab? We can. In fact, a lot of people already have. Loads of games like Knave, Troika, and Shadow Dark use an inventory system that's based on item slots rather than calculating exact weight. It's faster and more fun, and CROWS uses similar mechanics. For those unfamiliar, and in an inventory system like this, each character has a specific number of item slots that determines how many items they can carry. Most items take up 1 slot. Big items might take up 2 slots, and smaller items like arrows, daggers, or potions can have multiple items of the same kind stacked into a single slot, like stacking up all your torches or dirt blocks into a single space in your inventory in Minecraft. All right, so now I guess I'm not sure if they're doing something unique. Or not, unique's hard, because what the heck unique stuff is going on? But I mean more, it seems like maybe they're going to use slots. I'm curious if they'll have their own spin on slots, but at least I got to give them credit. I don't want to say I'm giving credit because I feel like you should do this, but anyway, they did mention some other games, because like I said earlier on, I felt like they were just kind of saying stuff and not acknowledging that all the other games that came before them. And I felt that way about some of the things on the Draw Steel that they don't mention. They did not mention things like no miss, no null results isn't their unique invention, but whatever. But here I'm glad they're just calling out some games. Hey, Ian, you read the post last night. Cool. And Brian says, honestly, engaging inventory management sounds so boring. Can anyone imagine how that would be fun at the table with other people? I think you could probably make it fun. I really think that, especially with the in-person games, I really think that board gaming it up a little bit. Like, imagine if you had, like you do in a computer role-playing game, where you literally had little cutouts of stuff and you could fit it. You had your character sheet on a table in front of you and you could kind of fit it in there or not. And then you had to, I think that could be fun. I mean, I guess is the fun worth maybe the extra time you're spending or not? But I do think that the slots thing, it's pretty fast. Oh, I've got 8 slots. I can take up this. Twilight 2000 had an interesting one too, where the way they were doing it, and it was also pretty quick. I mean, I kind of feel like I'm going all in on. I want a lot of this stuff, the management stuff. I want it, but I want it to be fast. But I guess I want it to be fast, but I don't want it to be mercurial. And this is why I don't like the usage dice. The usage dice to me is a little too random. I don't like that. I want to be able to count on it. I want it to be consistent and steady. I don't want the swings. There's enough swingy stuff in a lot of these games. I don't need swingy stuff in my inventory. But I also want it to be fast. And I know some folks will argue, and rightfully so, that, hey, the math behind pounds and stuff isn't particularly slow. No, but it could be quicker. And I get back to that part where I feel like I make a lot is that, hey, is the juice worth the squeeze? Am I going to spend 10 minutes here doing this inventory or whatever minutes so I can do it in 30 seconds? Or, it's not that big a screen. Darth Harvey, oh, sorry if you're getting audio issues. Let me know if it's happening. I'm not too much I can do about it unless it's just it could be a bandwidthy thing. I don't know. Let me see. Stream health. Let me just take a look. It says stream is healthy. So hopefully you're all right. But Ian says, well, they're going the physical token route for inventory, which is fast. We need to rearrange and hand over items. Yeah, I don't think that's fun. I think when you're playing in person, I think all that tactile stuff actually adds a lot. Darth Harvey, I think, I'm trying this. So one of the things I'm trying this as an aside, I'm doing both a vertical and horizontal stream, and I don't know if that's pushing my bandwidth over the line. Okay, 30 seconds behind. I fixed it. Okay, cool. All right, cool, Gary. Thanks for checking in. Okay, I think Darth Harvey might be on the vertical. I'll have to mess around with my settings. But, okay. Where was I in the... Hold on a minute. I closed up windows I didn't want to keep closed. Okay, there we go. All right. Let's see. We were down by Minecraft. Okay, for CROWS, every character has 2 hand item slots. Anything in them is held and equipped. 2 belt item slots and 10 backpack slots. I had this in my game too. not that I have any reason to think, and I didn't invent that either, and not that I have any reason to think that they're doing that. I think I actually have more belt slots. I tried to do more belt slots. During dangerous situations like combat or a trap going off, a character can freely swap between the items on their belt and the items in their hands. But if they want to grab an item from their backpack, they have to roll a d10. If the result of the roll is equal to or higher than the item slot, they can draw the item from their backpack. Otherwise, they can rearrange their backpack slots, but can't take anything out of it. The order of stuff in your backpack matters. I've seen this somewhere else. I don't know where, though. Oh, Darth Harvey. No worries. I don't know where I've seen it before, but I've seen it. I actually really like, Lamentations of the Flame Princess, a game that I really think I know that issues with the creators and stuff, unfortunately, makes it something that I wouldn't really recommend to anyone. But it's a really good system, and I really like their backpacks, which I've used a lot. And I just feel like you're in the middle of combat with stuff in your face, or even if it's not in your face, you cannot start searching through your backpack. Like that to me is just a stupid. If you think about it, just think about it in real time. Imagine you have your backpack on your shoulders, right? You got two straps. Now you've got orcs bearing down on you. So you're going to take your backpack and you have a shield and a sword or something potentially, or a staff, or even just a dagger in one hand. Now you're going to, within the passage of what usually in combat rounds is, 10 seconds, 6 seconds, 3 seconds. I mean, if you want to go OD&D, it was a minute, but even still, you're going to take your backpack off, I guess, swing it around, unzip it, pop it open. You have to, assuming you have one hand free, but it doesn't really, none of the rules in these games ever seem to wonder, like, what are you doing with your shield or your sword as you're rummaging in your bag to find this thing, to pull it out and then use it? Like, it's just silly. So, Lamentation is something where it takes like a minute. I forget exactly, they had whatever rule. But what I liked is, one, if you're going to go through your bag, that's an out of combat thing. Though I think one of the things, either I came up with it, I don't want to think, I probably still come over, is that you could dump your bag out and just try to, and then like, but even that's like an action, then grab something. Like it takes longer. And I think when you dump your bag out, there's a chance that something would break. I don't know. I liked it. But this is cool. But I was just thinking games where people are like, we're in the middle of combat and I go in my bag and I get a potion, I hand it to Phil. It's like, that's like, you're in the middle of combat. What makes you think you have that much time and space and leisure to go through your bag like that? I mean, have you ever tried to dig in your bag for something? I mean, it always seems to take longer than it probably does, because if people are watching you or waiting for you, it's just embarrassing. But, that's not an instant process. Brian says that he's got the raccoon fingers feat, which allows him instant access. Yeah. Okay. If you're constantly rearranging things on a character sheet by erasing and rewriting slots, things are going to get messy. So we decided to take a page out of the Mouse Ritter book, metaphorically speaking, and use cards to represent items and give each player an inventory sheet for their character. I think this is a good idea. And again, I'm glad that they are referencing Mouse Ritter, another game that has done this. It is a rough work in progress, but here's an example of those cards and the inventory sheet that I've been using to play test the game at the office and conventions below. So they just have some, you get your cards. I think you can get it, and you got the sheet. I think it's great. Let's see. The cards make rearranging your character's equipment a snap, and also makes it easy to award treasure and trade equipment with allies. I want to use this magic sword, but it means I need to drop my old one. Anyone in the market for a sword is a common question that players ask during playtests as they hold up an item card and offer it to their friends. I mean, to be fair, people do that even without the cards. Like, hey, I got this. I had a magic sword +1. I got a +2 one. Does anyone need a magic sword +1? And then you either stow it to sell it, or give it away, or you give it to somebody else. But yes, the cards, I do think that especially, and I think for convention play, really any kind of in-person play, but certainly you want to snazzy up the game for like a game store game or a convention game, having props and things like that, and giving it a table presence, if you will. People get all wrapped up in these crazy GM screens, and they're cool. But I think when you can have stuff in front of the players, and you can give them bits and bobs, and you can kind of set up, even if you're not doing terrain and you're not doing that kind of combat stuff, I just think is fun and makes it interactive. And yeah, you can hand cards to each other, and I think it's cool. But you could do those for any game, and you could even do it with games with weights. You just need to have the weights on there, and you'd still have to do the little calculus, right? But again, this kind of system with slots where you can just lay cards down to it is good. Brian said, so items on cards, dude, this is so much writing about a thing that people can have been doing. Yes, well, I mean, that's kind of the point, right? This is the pitch for their game, and they're trying to pitch it to their people. And I don't know, I'm assuming they know their audience. I mean, look, it's a Patreon. They're trying to bring it up. They're going to have a Kickstarter, right? So they want to talk about everything. So they're going to write it up. They're not going to just be like, and hey, equipment cards. And like, I give them credit for acknowledging other games have done this before. But I have a feeling that they're writing this assuming their audience is not familiar with these. And I don't know enough about the Draw Steel core audience to know, because Matt has talked about old school playing and things like that. And I know from his videos, people will go pick up Red Hand of Doom. I think it probably got a huge bump in sales of both digital copies and print on demands, and probably eBay also, because Matt Colville hosted. He talked about it as one of those things I know people have had. I've seen the threads of like, oh, we're going to draw steel, a conversion of Red Hand of Doom, blah blah blah. But I get the sense maybe that a lot of their crowd are not game omnivores, maybe is the best way to put it, so that they are not they're not intimately familiar with all these other games. So they're spelling out in a way that for some of us who are familiar with these games, it's like, oh yeah, right, okay, they're doing slots, like great, like to a different crowd, I'd be like, you could just say, oh yeah, we're doing equipment cards, slots, and whatever. It's like, okay, great, but they're rolling it out. They are being verbose, but I don't think it's verbose without purpose. It's just that we're probably not the core audience, except for maybe Ian. Ian, did you read Draw Steel yet? Have you gotten into the Draw Steel? Let's see. Brian says, I think the Draw Steel audience is familiar with this from their experience, mostly dudes that are pretty involved in the hobby already. Okay, maybe. All right. Cards. Yeah, I got it. All right, let's see. In testing, folks have enjoyed the inventory system, so now we're brainstorming the best way to implement it for a longer-term campaign. We're thinking some combination of a locking folio and dry erase markers so that we can write on the cards. At the moment, we're going to play around and see what works best. That's cool. I don't know what exactly you need to write on the cards, but that's fine. I mean, a folio kind of idea is cool, but also, yeah, I mean, a card holder, index card holder, I don't know, or one of those things. Make them if they're roughly, I guess, the same size as baseball cards. They have all those sleeves for different collectible card game, right? If you're using the kind of classic, I say baseball cards. Does anybody collect baseball cards anymore? Your Pokemon, Magic, regular card. There's all kinds of card carriers. You don't really need to. I mean, I suppose why not make money, put the MCDM stamp on it, emboss the cover with MCDM, if people will buy your holder. Oh, this is just some cooling flat white / cappuccino for the working man. Brian says, do we think the MCDM crowd is mostly newbies to gaming? No, I wouldn't say they're newbies to gaming. I'm wondering if they're newbies to the broader. I don't know, because Brian, I agree with you. I guess I'm torn, right? Because I think on the one hand, the people who are originally MCDM's audience are those people from Matt Colville, following Matt Colville from his channel. And those people were probably, I don't know that he's the first. I mean, he is a bigger YouTube tabletop gaming channel. But I would get the sense like you that they probably weren't new to GMing and stuff. I think I just forget that how long 5e's been around. And if you're bouncing around, your kind of first experience is in that kind of 5e realm, maybe Pathfinder 2e, whatever, that you just might have just been there because that's when you started. Much like, I had basic and then I had AD&D. I never went back and got Holmes. I didn't know Holmes existed until I was an adult. I didn't know about the white box, as far as I kind of knew growing up, like, oh, BX, that's it. And I didn't have anybody around who was into Traveler, so I didn't see that stuff until later when I started really going to gaming stores. You're just kind of in your zone and you just kind of going ahead. So if you got into 5e, maybe you got the original starter kit and then doing that, and then you get more to DMing and then you're listening to his videos and stuff. It's not like he was talking about a wide swath of games. So you could have just been in that one, you're that 5e channel and you're going, and then suddenly like, oh, he's doing his own game and other things happening. I don't know. Right. So I don't know. But this to me seems to be clearly written towards people who maybe don't have a wide background in a bunch of other games. Okay, so let's get back to this. Focus, survival hard. Diving into forgotten ruins in search of treasure should be an experience filled with dread, but like fun dread, the kind you feel playing a Resident Evil or Silent Hill game. Every moment spent within a dungeon should be fused with uncertainty about what danger lurks nearby. Survival horror means being faced with sudden death, and that clever split-second decisions and excellent preparation can save your life when death comes knocking. Survival horror games should be deadly, surprising, and rewarding for those who succeed. Let's talk deadly first. Dungeons and CROWS don't care how powerful the adventurers are. What's inside the dungeon is what's inside the dungeon, and that doesn't magically change based on the number or power level of the PCs. Aha, all right. So balance out the window. We're going unbalanced. No, I don't know if that's what they're saying. I mean, it seems to be what they're saying, but we'll see how they implement it. If they decide to poke a powerful demon from another dimension with a stick, that's on them. If the characters enter a dungeon with a plan to kill everything they come across by running up to it and bashing it until the creature's stamina is 0, they'll be rolling up new characters right quick. The monsters don't plan to fight fair, so the player should do whatever they can to prepare for or avoid combat to survive. Even if the characters and monsters are evenly matched, combat tends to be a pretty grisly affair. Side initiative that changes each round means the monsters might end up taking 2 turns in a row. Terrifying. Okay, so there's a little hint. Doing side initiative, which you can re-roll it every round. As an adventure goes on, a PC's health pools dwindle, making it hard to survive long stretches of dungeon delving without some clever thinking. Player characters have 3 pools of health. Any armor worn takes up backpack slots and has an armor durability, or AD. For example, light armor takes up 2 slots and has an AD of 5. When a character takes damage, they reduce the AD of any armor worn equal to the damage taken. When an armor's AD is 0, it's functionally useless until it is repaired, which can be done during a rest. Well, that's my system. Except for the repair part. I mean, you do have to use a short rest kind of thing to regenerate, but you don't actually need any bits and bobs to do it. And again, I wasn't the first one to do it. I know. Well, okay, that's cool. I mean, obviously I like the idea because I used it myself. Many characters will choose not to wear armor to have as many free inventory slots as possible, so they always have an AD of 0. I question who's doing that if they possibly can wear armor. I mean, granted, your mage, I mean, assuming they have a mage, they haven't talked about whatever their archetypes, classes, whatever it looked like. But, I have a hard time thinking someone's just going to not spend the slots for armor. Let's see. Oh, Brian's got some comments in here. Let me screen there. Let's see. Okay. The formula is capture big following of social media, release a system, then reintroduce a foundational gaming element to hat audience as novel. I mean, yes, I think they have done a little bit of that in the past. Not maybe more than a little. However, I appreciate that at least in this, as we got past that maybe first intro, they've done a good job of calling out games that have offered some of the things that they are offering. And then Ian says, basically, OD&D is pretty balanced. Low-level monsters on the first level dungeon, higher hit dice the second, etc. Yeah, I think somebody, maybe me, just did a video on that last week. Yes, the older games were balanced in a fashion. Not the same kind of balance that people in, say, the 5e universe are used to, and people pointed that out. And I'll probably make another video on kind of what they mean by balance. It's much more like, yeah, I think maybe kind of, sort of, you can probably do something with this, but not necessarily different levels of this is equal to you, this is better than you. But yes, they were keeping an eye out, and they had several comments in different places, in different books, unfortunately, and they don't always carry through, where they say things like, hey, if the dice give you an encounter that's just going to blow up your party, you don't have to take it, right? The idea that you're kind of a prisoner, you're not a prisoner to the dice. There's many things like that out there. Okay, so and that's why I guess I'm curious, are they really getting rid of balance entirely, or are they going to do balance differently? Are they going to do it like level the dungeon? Are they going to do it otherwise? Are they just going to tell you, signpost the heck out of stuff as a way of not necessarily balancing, but just as an alternative, so that the players are keenly aware that there are demons below that are not waiting to be pointed with sticks? But yes, as Kronko's pointed out, in OD&D, they do keep you on. I mean, that's the funny thing is OD&D in these older games would give you these methods for understanding as a party. If I'm on level 1, I can expect this. But they would always throw in some wrinkles. OD&D had several of these wrinkles. Then I think they've kind of fallen out of fashion. But the idea was, number one, OD&D, you have a chance of rolling an encounter that's higher than your level. So you could never be 100% comfortable that if you're on level 1, you couldn't see a higher level creature. Now, they cap those levels. If you're on level 1, using their tables, you couldn't get a level 9, dungeon level 9 anyway, monster. But you could get, say, a monster from level 3 coming in there. The other thing we do is they put all these tricks and traps in there to especially confuse you, the party, so that you wouldn't know what level the dungeon you might be on. So you might have some kind of staircase or something that takes you down, or some kind of teleporter, all these things that might move you to different levels of the dungeon. So you're thinking you're on level 2 of the dungeon. You're thinking, oh, we might be pretty good. And you're actually on level 6 of the dungeon, and you're in trouble. And you don't figure it out maybe until that first party gets obliterated. And then subsequent parties go, okay, that's some kind of weird stair, or it's some kind of teleportation trap, or something else that's moving us way deeper than we thought. So they both give you the tools to kind of give you the understanding, and they also give you the tools to monkey around with that understanding. It's the delicate dance, the delicate game mastering, refereeing dance. Okay, so let's see. So we go, okay, there's the AD of 0. All right, the second health pool is stamina. When a PC with an AD of 0 takes damage, the damage is subtracted from their stamina. You regain all stamina when you finish a rest. When a character's AD and stamina are 0, they take 1 wound for each point of damage dealt to them. Each wound fills a backpack inventory slot. When all the characters' backpack slots are full of wounds, they die. Yeah, this sounds extraordinarily familiar. I took some inspiration from Knave for this, which has a similar wound system. And I think, and again, I forget all the lineage stuff, but this is another odd-like. I'm pretty sure Karen has something like this too, where you've got armor, you got hit protection, and then it starts going to your attributes. So when he says he took some inspiration from Knave, is it really some? But I mean, look, we're not getting any of the details. So the devil's in the details, as they say. But all right, so at least we know what we're doing here. You heal 1 wound when you finish a rest. If 9 of your 10 backpack slots are full of wounds and you rest, you'll get your armor and stamina back. But once those are gone, you have far less of a cushion to protect you from death. The fact that you're dropping equipment, which determines what special stuff you can do as you take serious damage, makes the game quite deadly. The longer you stay in the dungeon taking damage, the harder it becomes to walk out alive. Once you take on some wounds, going further into the dungeon really feels like pushing your luck, since recovery isn't as simple as a single rest. And of course, every rest in the dungeon is a risk that could bring a wandering monster to your camp. All right, so wandering monsters, check. CROWS is built to bring shock. One of the first conventions Matt and I had about conversations Matt and I had about CROWS was that a real survival horror experience shouldn't have traditional D20 fantasy monsters, including zombies and skeletons. It should have stuff that makes the player say, "What the heck is that?" Like the first time you saw a licker in Resident Evil 2, or when those 2 dudes from the newspaper fused together to make a flesh monster in Stranger Things 3, when Jonathan and Nancy get attacked in the hospital. Nick is no stranger to creating original monsters. It was a big part of his job when he was working in video games full-time, and he did the visual design of MCDM's Demons for 5th edition and Draw Steel, among many other cool monsters. He's an expert at making new critters. We want all original monsters inhabiting the dungeons of CROWS. All right, so this is cool. I mean, not that the other stuff isn't cool. It's fine. Right? But this kind of reminds me of my reaction to Shadow Dark, which is just, it's fine. Like, it's good. And I love people who are super into it, but I'm also like, it's good because I've seen a lot of it before and I've experienced a lot before, and it's not totally unfamiliar to me. And I feel like a lot of CROWS is coming out. It's like, oh, this is great. Okay, it's like, kind of like I said about Shadow Dark, like, oh, it's like taking all this stuff from blog posts and other games and kind of putting it together. And I do feel like CROWS is doing a lot of that. But now we're getting something that to me is maybe almost the selling point of it, because all this stuff they're talking about so far, I can just play the game as I already have. Like, okay, I want this stuff. I can play in Oddlike or Knave or Cairn or whatever, unless I just really love the 2D10 system, which I probably could just use 2D10 instead of D20 for those games if I wanted to. Yeah, don't have the whatever, right? Okay, great. But original monsters, like, if we're going really original, like, now it's like, okay, this game for me, it's like, well, maybe I'll never play CROWS for CROWS, but if they're going to come up with a lot of cool monsters, maybe that bestiary, or if it's in the core book, whatever, maybe that would be worth picking up for a bunch of cool monsters. Croco says, the only reason stuff like zombies or skeletons aren't scary anymore is overexposure because they're low level. That's true. And I think the thing is with those is you need to use a bunch of them. I think is where they shine. Where they shine is that there's a bunch of them, and the fact that they can't be reasoned with. One of those fun tidbits in OD&D that I don't think made it didn't make it to BX. I don't remember, but it did. I don't know if it got into AD&D, but it's the idea that you can drop food to distract animals. You can drop loot to distract intelligent creatures. Well, guess what? Undead, you can't talk to them. There's no reaction. They just come at you, and you can't drop loot. You can't drop treasure to try to cut your losses and just get away. So you really have to either beat them or escape from them. And if you don't have a cleric and that turn isn't there for you, then I think they need even more. But I think you need to have, this is where I just feel like just bring in a bunch, because they're take advantage of the fact that they're unintelligent, and just pile on more of them to make it more of this, like in the movies and the media and stuff, where it's not the one zombie that's scary. It's when there's 12 zombies and they're piling on you and they're making it difficult just to get away from them. they're filling up, talking about filling up inventory slots. They're filling up spots in the room. And suddenly you're now between you and the door and there's 8, you can't get there anymore because they blocked you. Like, what do we do? That is where I think they shine. And not enough games really use them in that way. It's like, oh, there's 3 zombies over here. It's like, well, there's 3 and you're a party of 5. It's like, okay, but now there's 20 zombies. And maybe this is one thing I liked out of that. What was that movie? Was it City of the Dead or something where and I think they've done it in some other movies too, where you have all these undead and they're kind of asleep and they're trying to slip through the room. And they know if they wake up one of these things, they're going to have 100 zombies on them. So it's imperative that they be quiet. Like those I think are maybe were fun. You can have some really fun stuff with them. But I do agree on the overexposure part. They are used a lot. They're near low-level fodder. They're like the giant rats oftentimes, where you just, you're beating them up at level 1. So why are they going to scare you? Krogo says, I think it's funny when polished games want all original monsters. Great for homebrew, but in published game, your monster manual is only original once. That's true. And Brian says, it's when the zombies start doing coordinated dances to Michael Jackson's when the fear really kicks in. Heck yeah, though. Were people ever scared of Thriller? Did Thriller scare anybody? Because, man, as a kid, it was just awesome. That's what those are those moments that I guess like there's moments that are lost in time, like the people who, when they first saw a plane, the Wright brothers and the first planes start appearing, it's like, oh my gosh, look at this thing. Like, people can fly. Like, that is crazy. And you can't really experience that anymore. And I think there was the time when kind of MTV was a big deal. And then a song like Thriller and the video for Thriller, or another, it wasn't the size of Thriller, but Money for Nothing, the Dire Straits song, with the first computer animated thing that looks so crazy primitive now, but the the shock and awe and just like how it's just like, oh my gosh, look at this, they did this with computers, was just so crazy. You can't really recapture those moments. All right, where was I on the monster thing? Let's see. The plan right now is to not even name these creatures, but rather refer to them by a name or letter in the rules, such as Undead A or Monster 12, and let the players in your game be the ones to come up with what to call these things. Original monsters mean each one is going to need some art. All of this will amp up the survival horror surprise for players, since they won't be able to predict what sort of creature they might find around the corner of the next dungeon. I wonder if that's going to stick. I still think you name them, but you can name them something and then have the players come up with their own names. Like, you can even name them just off of their tags or their giant undead exploder, whatever, giant zombie exploder. And that can be the name. And then the players are going to come up with whatever name. So I'll be curious if they stick with that Undead A or Monster 12. And plus, I don't know how many you're going to have, but you could get through the alphabet or the numbers. Well, the numbers you can't run out, but might get a little unwieldy. Oh, Brian says Vincent Price's voiceover. That was awesome. Okay, original monsters aren't the only surprises. Every good dungeon crawl includes a table of random encounters. Surprise, wandering monster, but when should the ref roll to see if one occurs? This is something I've always struggled with when I'm running a dungeon. I roll when the PCs make a bunch of noise and when they rest. But how often should I be rolling for an encounter otherwise to add a dash of that unexpected danger to the game? I feel like I'm doing it too often or forgetting about it entirely. I'm similarly confused and going on vibes only when a spell or effect lasts a specific amount of time in-game, like 10 minutes or 1 hour. How do you know when it ends, since the time in-game often passes in a combination of time periods faster than, equal to, or slower than real time? Hold on a minute. Let me read this again. Let's see. Every good dungeon crawl includes a table of random encounters. All right, that's great. But when should the ref roll? Okay. They've struggled in the past. They roll when the pieces make a bunch of noise when they rest, but how often should they be rolling for encounter otherwise? Okay, well, there have been rules for that, but that's fair enough, James. I don't know what games you were playing. Okay. So what is there? All right, so here's the way they're going to do it. Okay, I found a way to solve both these issues by combining 2 ideas: real-time turns and usage dice. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but again, it's just, maybe this is just all games now are going to be some combination of stuff that's come out. So it's funny because Shadow Dark real-time stuff, I know I'd read about it pre-Shadow. I would not have Shadow Dark invented, though they popularized it, and now Shadow Dark itself is getting and not that they should be mad about anything, because that's just how it works. You do something really well that people love, people are going to copy it. But it's just, all right. So here we go. Real-time turns and usage dice. In Shadow Dark, another great game, a torch lasts 1 hour of real time. Fans of the game love this aspect because it adds an element of real-time pressure to get through the dungeon before their light sources run out. I like it too, but I actually wanted more of an element of randomness to when a light source goes out combined with that real-time pressure, and so enter usage dice. Yes, usage dice. I just talked about how I do not love usage dice, and I don't. But that's fair enough. Usage dice are a concept that I've seen in lots of dungeon crawling and old school games. All right, so another admission. How long does a torch last? Well, in some games, that duration is tracked with a usage die. That die might start at a d8. When the rules say to roll a usage die for the torch, you roll that d8. If the result is a 1 or a 2, depending on the game, the die decrements to become a d6, and otherwise it remains a d8. Roll a 1 or 2 on a d6, and it becomes a d4. Roll a 1 or 2 on a d4, and the torch goes out. This isn't just for torches. It works for spell effects, anything with fuel, wands, etc. An item could start with a d12 or d10 usage die. It all depends on the item and the game. And this is where I tend to think, again, this is just me, that as players, there's so much randomness in the game that I am totally fine with thinking, like, you know what? We've gotten far enough we've advanced far enough in whatever world we are that torches are pretty consistent. And I've actually thought about it. It wouldn't be bad to me if your torch might run out on turn 5 of 6 or turn 7 of 6, right? That you could have a little variance at the end of the life of the torch. But I just don't need that. I don't need that swinginess for that stuff. Just me, this is me personally. But look, people love their usage dice. For CROWS, the game currently only requires d6s and d10s, so I don't want to use the traditional usage dice rules because it would require the players to have other types of dice. Additionally, I would actually like the usage dice to be a little swingier. Oh my gosh, even more swingy? I like the idea that when you roll your usage die, at any point the item you're using or the effect you're under could burn out. It adds a greater element of surprise. Yeah, and randomness, but I guess maybe they're just going for the swinginess, I guess. Brian says the versatility of usage dice. Deus, plinth, other TTRPG things. Yes, indeed. We haven't said Deus or plinth yet. I like those words. Look, usage dice are fine. But interesting that they want to make it even swingier. Which, and the thing is, to be fair, I think this will be a lot of fun in a con game when you're going. I think some of these things I think about is if I'm playing this and it's a long-term game. But if I'm playing it and I'm just playing a con game or a one-shot, a lot of these things, the swinginess stuff, it's fun. It is fun. The randomness is just kind of fun. You're going in, you're taking what comes at you and you're just dealing with it. Okay, usage dice and CROWS are all d6s. An item or effect can have 1 or more usage dice. When you roll an item or effect's usage dice, you roll all the dice. Any die that comes up 1 or 2 is removed from the item or effect and the others remain. When an item or effect has no usage dice left, the item becomes useless. Maybe forever in the case of something like a torch or wand, or maybe until it is refueled in the case of something like a lantern. This means if an item or effect has lots of usage dice, it's likely to last a while, but not guaranteed. That's cool. I like that. That's a different way to do it. I mean, you're rolling a pool of d6s and you still got the swinginess, right? Because you could roll a bunch of 1s or 2s and suddenly your torch has gone down from a full one to a nub. But I like the idea of, I like them figuring out a way to use it with the dice that they're using. So that's cool. CROWS, like many games, has a dungeon turn. Once you enter a dungeon and start exploring, the game takes place in increments of 30 minutes of real time. At the end of each dungeon turn, the ref rolls for a random encounter, which may or may not occur, and players roll usage dice for light sources and other effects. This adds an element of time pressure on the players and gives the ref a good reminder and pacing to add some surprises to the crawl. So far in testing, it's been a big hit. Sometimes nothing happens at the end of a dungeon turn. Sometimes the lights go out at the same time a monster shows up, in the middle of an already ongoing combat encounter, and it rules. It's a good thing character creation is super quick because folks die fast and can get back into the game with a roll of the dice and a quick selection of cards. Yep. I mean, I think that's fair. I think the one thing with having the kind of clockwork torch is and I don't think you have to do this. I think you can play with randomness in the turn, and I think you can definitely play like, hey, if you're on the last turn of a torch and it goes out, that we can roll every combat round. It goes out. Like, you can do some things, I think, to give you that, like, ooh, is it going out? But I get that. That's a fun thing that you don't get. 30-minute real time. So I guess what I'm not sure about is they're using real time terms. I guess the torch, maybe it's every turn, every time that half hour goes, you roll for your torches. I guess would be what it is. Hey, fantastic, Pat. Thanks. Appreciate it. Brian says they're going to be in and watch out for a brazier. Yes, I got to watch out for brazier so I don't say brazier for sure. Okay. All right. There's a lot more to share about the rules of CROWS that incorporate danger and surprise, but we'll save that for future posts. This one is already getting long. You tell me. I thought I'd be through this kind of fast, and I'm going to end up doing an hour on this, and I didn't even expect to. Let's move on to giving the players a chance to be clever. This game has all manner of equipment, spells, and treasure that hold a lot of utility value. Folks who have been playing the game for a while know the value of a simple 10-foot pole or a spell that can create a noise 60 feet away. Expect to see lots of that with rules, advice, and encouragement for refs running the game to award great player ideas and leave the risky ones to the dice to decide. I just noticed now, and they probably use it all along, but they've been using refs for their master. What do they call it? They call it the director in Draw Steel. I wonder if they're going to have are they going to use referee, which I think is cool. I like it. Or are they going to have another bespoke term for the dungeon master? So here's some interesting stuff. Okay, so now, next focus, base building. CROWS isn't all dungeon crawling. The PCs have a town that's their home base. It's a place where they can rest, to heal those wounds, buy new equipment, craft new gear, sell treasure, and invest gold in the town. Investing in the town gives the PCs another reason to bring back loot from the ruins scattered around the world of CROWS, because building a better town attracts more merchants, which allows them to purchase better gear, research new spells, and imbue items with more powerful enchantments. When a PC dies, they can be entombed in the town's crypt, where they grant a small boon to another adventurer who visits their eternal resting place before going out on an adventure. That's cool. And those lucky PCs who survive enough dungeon runs to become powerful adventurers can retire to the town before their number comes up. These high-level PCs become NPCs and give the town big boons that allow the next crew of CROWS to start off better than their predecessors. Characters will come and go, but the town remains and is the thing that benefits most from all these dungeon crawls. All right. Brian says this article's like some dry toast. I don't find it that bad. I feel the enthusiasm that James is projecting out there for it. Again, it's just a lot of this stuff is just not new to us or novel to us. So I can see some people going, oh, wow, this is cool. And some of us are going, okay. Like, I'm all for bringing this uptown. I guess I'm not a huge fan of what I feel like is the video gamification of the base town, where it feels like a video game where you come in like, oh, and then you're moving the little piece. Oh, look, I've got enough resources to buy the blacksmith. And then I move the blacksmith and, I find the spot where the little square around it's green where I can plunk it down and you get a little plunk, and then you get a little animation of people building the blacksmith. And now I have a blacksmith. Like, I don't love that. I do love settlements and the domain stuff, but I guess I like it when it doesn't feel quite so video gamey. But again, this is a me complaint, and I don't think matches what people want. Because people like the stuff, and I think they like the simplicity and ease of stuff. Excuse me. I just personally prefer it to not feel so video gamey. But yes, it definitely has a roguelite. As I learned, roguelite versus roguelike has a very kind of roguelite-ish thing going on, which I've been intrigued with lately, probably because I've been playing a bunch of roguelite games. So that's cool. Though I just probably would do it differently myself. Okay, now travel. Getting from your hometown to a dungeon and back isn't all fancy, free, and breezy. Those monsters that are in dungeons come out and wander the wilderness, plus the very air itself is infused with mind-altering magic. All right, so there's a little setting bit. You don't want to get lost on your way to an ancient ruin, but you sure can. Otherwise, you might show up with less food than you planned and have to turn back after only a short stint. Or you could push your luck. What are the odds you'd get lost on your way back to town? CROWS has robust rules from traveling from one place to the next, but those are currently new and volatile. So we'll talk about those in another post. All right. I'm just gonna put a guess and say they're gonna go with some kind of point crawl dealio. Maybe even using sort of journey type rules like the One Ring has. I'm gonna say right now that's my prediction. We'll see how right or wrong I am, if I remember, and if we come back to read when they develop that stuff further. Okay, now the world of CROWS. You can use the CROWS rules to play in any campaign setting you'd like that fits with its themes, but the RPG is going to come with a default world. We're still hammering out the story, but the basic idea is that 50 years ago, the world was a lovely place. The archmages ruled the land with love and benevolence, each in charge of a different domain and using their magic to help their people prosper. But magic is sentient and sapient. It abhorred being bent to the will of the archmages and began to fight back, slowly corrupting the heart of each through subtlety and tragedy. One by one, the archmages turned away from their people, seeking to control and dominate the others of their order. They became the necromancers, using their magic to animate the dead, summon monsters from other worlds, and fuse together animals into twisted, unnatural creations. Their experiments made the air toxic, and magic became an unstable, unpredictable force that often bites back at its wielders, and we got rules for that too. Okay. I mean, I feel like this feels very kind of Colvillian to me, but it's fine. You had good guys turn to bad guys, and now you got nasty magic air going on. 10 years ago, the necromancers disappeared. Their fates are unknown. Those humans who survived their war hid in the ruins of desolated places, building up sheltered towns. These places now trade with each other, and the brave and foolish among the townsfolk delve into places the necromancers left behind to find untold fortune, items of great power, and death. Those who are lucky retire early or die quick. Those who remain in shelter call these adventurers CROWS, for they seek shiny objects and pick over the bones of the dead to bring wealth back to the nest. I like that. I kind of figured that's where CROWS came from, and it's a cool word. Kind of a little bit of Forbidden Lands there. The backstory of Forbidden Lands was very similar, just in terms of there was a place that was under some kind of control by horrible evil, and then the horrible evil has vanished, and now people are starting to poke their heads up and look around and kind of delve stuff. All right, and then you got some links if you want to learn more. Let me know if you're pumped about CROWS. Signed, James. So I guess my feelings are, it's fine. The setting, it's not, it's fine. I mean, the magic, the kind of mechanic of the air is infused with dangerous magic, so the more you're outside, or how that works is interesting, because I'm assuming people's settlements are above ground, or maybe it's only in certain zones. There's certain things that spew evil magic air. I'm kind of curious about that. I'm definitely curious about the monsters. Seems interesting. A lot of the other stuff, it's fine. It's fine. I think that MCDM itself is going to be pulling a lot of weight for this, just in terms of the interest level. People are going to sign up for this because it's Colville and company. James and Jacasso, Matt Colville, etc. Right. That I think is going to be carrying a lot of the load for this right now. Otherwise, it's a nice picking and choosing bits from other games that, if not popular in the broad sense, are fairly acclaimed and well thought of, putting together using their base mechanic. And yeah, I'm sure it'll look nice. I think the art will be cool. I mean, I'm not familiar with this person's art, but that's a cool picture. I can dig it. I can dig the picture, and this will be at home with any kind of OSR-ish zine that you get. I do appreciate that they're a little bit more open with their influences this time around than I felt like they were the last time around, which is good. I'm definitely curious. I mean, this is like a long way in the future, but I'm curious how it's going to be. These people who are coming, right? This is what gaming was like, or at least this was the kind of like, at least rules wise, people at the tables did whatever, but they're going to be coming around to this older version of the game, of gaming or playing. And I'm curious how these folks who have potentially been on this kind of 5e path, maybe MCDM, if they follow this and decide to try it, how they take to all this stuff. It'll be interesting, because it'll be kind of a different crowd, but hopefully they're reading this and everything else, they'll be kind of ready for it. Because I do think this kind of gaming, you need to, especially for players who may not be used to this kind of gaming, I think you really need to do a good job onboarding people. And I don't think folks always do the best onboarding. I don't really have a lot of reason for this, other than I just think, in my, not to pump up myself, but when I've run this kind of game for people who are new, and even people who are old, I just try to really be almost over onboarding. Well, I will say and restate again, to kind of the deadliness and the running away, all that kind of stuff that we sometimes take for granted, or we wonder why don't players do. Like, I am constantly trying to make sure people understand that stuff, and I'll state it and restate it. I'll do it part of the intro. I'll do it the first time they run into something. I'll do it later on. Hey, you can run away. You don't have to be here. Like all these things to kind of get this kind of style of play ingrained. So I'm definitely curious what people's experiences are going to be. Maybe, I know they tend to do a lot of play test docs that they release to their Patreon patrons. I'm not one, obviously, but when those start to filter out and people start playing with and seeing it, I'll be curious to say. But if you love MCDM, if you love their 2D10 system, I think this is, I guess a bottom line is, as much as I may kind of joke and play, I'm like, huh, I'm excited for this only because it's going to get more people into this style of gaming that I really like. And hopefully if they get a taste of this and maybe they saw some of those links to Knave and Shadow Dark and all these other games and they start to think about, oh, what other stuff's out there, then they get kind of opened up. So this may be kind of end up in a, not in a weird way, but in a way just bringing more attention, kind of like Shadow Dark has done, bring more attention on this kind of style of gaming that I really like. So I hope it is successful in that regard. Well, look at that. I am an hour 5. I thought for sure I'd be through this thing in a half hour, but it was a longer read than I thought. Brian says, are they supposed to run away in this or die and create a new character right away? I mean, I guess that's always up to the character. I mean, he didn't say here like running away is a thing, but they did emphasize the survive and bring back treasures, not kill things. So we'll see. But even if it was that, like people just start running in and dying, and then they start going, because what happens is, I mean, this is how I could foresee it, right? So you get a bunch of people who they're ingrained in the 5e and in the draw steal sort of heroic, we don't run kind of thing. And I don't know that draw steal doesn't do that, but I get the sense in draw steal that you're not really meant to run away. The game's encouraging you to stick around. But, whatever. I don't know. I don't want to besmirch draw steal players. But even if they get into this game, if we fast forward and they're not running away and they're dying in droves, they're going to start going to Reddit and other communities saying, is it me or do I die in CROWS a lot? Like we die really a lot. And I'm wondering if even this is more than we're supposed to or whatever. And then people can enlighten them. They can tell them saying, have you heard of the Principia Apocrypha? Or have you heard of these other documents and all these blogs, all this stuff written about this style of gaming? And that will open the doors. And that's really why I'm really hopeful for this, or I'm happy about it, is because I think it's just going to open people up to it. And if they come into it because MCDM gave it a fresh coat of paint and they put their little spin on it, that's great. So that's where I am on it. But now, do I look at it and say, for me, am I going to back CROWS? At the moment, no. If their monsters look amazing and the book's not super expensive, like, ooh, the monsters are crazy, then I could see talking myself into it at some point. But otherwise, it's fine. I can play this game already, basically. Play the game already. Aaron says, great art. Yes, this art is very cool. And we'll say, and assuming, he's doing all the art, or I don't know all of it, but he's in charge of it. So I imagine we're going to get a lot of art like that. So yes, should be good. Should be great. All right, my hope is to come back later in the afternoon and do maybe a Reddit kind of stream, see what's going on. I know there's going to be some posts about CROWS on Reddit because I've already seen them. People asking different things about Reddit or about CROWS and its relation, I think, to the OSR and other stuff. So that might be fun to read some of those. So look for me to return. Oh, I don't know. Boy, it's almost noon already. So maybe 3 or 4 o'clock, and then we'll see how it goes. But thanks, everybody, for hanging out for this and reading through this with me. Let me know in the comments, and once this closes, everywhere else, what you guys think of CROWS. And I'll talk to you later. Or I got that. I was going to